We get to talk about a really exciting. I know I'm going to push up my glasses when I say this, but I'm really excited to talk about AI in healthcare. In addition to my role at Tulane School of Medicine, I'm also the executive director of the Alliance for Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare. And we are a global advocacy group that's really focused on harnessing the power of machine learning and AI to help better healthcare. And we're a member-based organization, and our members are very, very diverse. And we have people from startups to universities. So Rice University is also a member of our organization, and Tulane as well. James is actually the treasurer of our organization. And our goal, even though we're very diverse, we all have the same problems. We have the same challenges of what to do with large, diverse data sets, and how do we deal with policy and regulatory. And those are going to be some of the items that we're going to touch upon today, because those are hard challenges. But our ultimate goal is how do we help patients in a responsible, ethical, and equitable way? And how do we use AI to help do that? And so I'm very excited to have our panelists here today. And I'm actually going to start with the middle because I'm leading from the AAIH. I'm going to start with Sarah, who's our board member that is representing us today. But it's Sarah, in addition to her role as a board member of the AAIH, she's also in addition to being a medical doctor, is in venture capital and owns her own company that is focused on developing peptide-based therapeutics utilizing AI. So we're very happy to have Dr. Sarah Benson-Konforty here with us as well.
I'm on the advisory board of Pepticom. I don't own it.
Okay.
I'm a shareholder.
Well, there's definitely.
I just had to say that, yeah.
Well, in addition to Sarah, we also have Ayame Dinkler, who is a principal at Crane Strategies, who has a very diverse background herself, recently at LCMC as health, and she started as the chief administrative officer and helping craft policies as well at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. So a great background to join us in this conversation about AI and healthcare. And finally, last but not least, Dr. Samantha Nava, who is with Rice University, and Hassel has, in addition to her director of being director of partnerships at Rice University, she's a member of the AAIH and is also working to shape academic and industry collaborations within this space, and been consistently at the helm of innovation in the space. And in her previous work, reinventing deep brain stimulation with her work at Motif Neurotech, fostering healthcare advancements in TMC innovation. So we have a very diverse panel and with different experiences, and we're excited to talk about AI and healthcare. So I'm going to start off with a general question for everyone. How do you envision the future of AI in healthcare and biotech over the next 5 years? Don't all start at once. Yeah.
Well, AI is going to be and is already very transformative for the healthcare industry. I mean, beginning from the research all the way to early detection, diagnosis, and obviously hospital setting and patient experience. So we will see AI changing and adding value and saving, actually, by, according to statistics, by 2028, $20 billion to the healthcare system, which is remarkable.
Wonderful. Ayame?
I agree. It's a really transformational time. It's an exciting time, which is why James described this panel as riveting, right?
No pressure.
It's a riveting topic. It's an exciting time. I think that the next few years are going to be critical as new tools are released and as Congress and our partners at the federal government kind of look at increasing regulatory. I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. I also think there's a lot of fear of the unknown. There is apprehension about people's jobs. Is my job going to be replaced by AI? I think as we deploy some of these tools and solutions over the next decade, it's going to be really important that we come out of the gate with a lot of balances in place, so that we're carefully kind of looking at the tremendous opportunities that we can't even imagine that AI can advance our society forward with, but also the very real risks that exist that we need to be cautious of.
Great. Sam?
Just to add a little bit more, AI has already been really transformative for healthcare, and I think it will continue to be so. We're going to see a lot more personalized medicine. We're going to see a lot more efficiency management in healthcare, whether it's administrative or within care. And yeah, it's gonna be great.
I'm going to stick with you, and I wanted to understand, how does Rice University's partnership strategy evolve to align with the changing landscape? Because it changes quite quickly,
Yeah.
and that's a really important piece.
Yeah, that's a good point. So one of the major strategies that we try to employ is interdisciplinary collaborations, and I think that's probably, you're going to hear me say it again and again. That's probably the key metric that we use to keep on top of what we can. Keeps us well-rounded, keeps us on top of the education and on top of research. So the more folks we have from different seats and from different experience, the more diversity we get at the table, essentially, the more ahead of the game, or at least close to the head of the game, that we can get. We also try to promote data sharing. We can go into a lot of conversation about that. Yeah, exactly. But data sharing is also a really great way for us to continue to evolve and adapt our algorithms for new applications and areas that we find issues with, right?
Right. And I wanted to touch a little bit, Ayame, on what you talked about in terms of policy. So what are the biggest, most significant policy challenges that we are facing currently, and how is it changing?
I think because this tool has been it's so revolutionary and it's so novel. Um, it's interesting kind of watching the federal government try to catch up with things that are already being used every day now, such as ChatGPT. So you're seeing from Congress, an effort to sort of look at crafting a regulatory framework. They are asking for stakeholder inputs. I was mentioning, Sarah, that we need to get your group in front of the committee that's taken some of those feedbacks. So, there will be a legislative effort. What that looks like, it depends who you ask. It's not moving fast enough, or it's going too fast, depending on your perspective. I also have to say that I think there's been a lot of action coming out of the Biden administration. They have made looking at AI an absolute priority. They have an AI strategic framework. They have been working with the top AI companies on commitments regarding safety and, the privacy and public trust, like things that are really critical national security issues, I think have been, on the forefront of this administration's mind for most of this year. So I think you're seeing the beginnings of it. What's interesting to me is that we are really at the beginning of this journey. And over time, that regulatory framework is sure to evolve. And as you're seeing more use of AI in healthcare, which is really in its infancy right now, I think that is only going to become more robust, since healthcare is already such a highly regulated field.
Yeah.
I think can only imagine how much more, examination that will come from policymakers in the future.
Agree.
Yeah, if I may add to this, I think that there are many efforts out there trying to evolve the regulation around AI. At the same time, I feel that the rubber needs to meet the road. And what do I mean by that is that there is a huge knowledge gap with the policymakers about us, about our industry. And I think that this is where we need to jump in as an industry and come and say, okay, here we are, we're the competent people to advocate for our whatever work product that we're producing. And this is why, I joined the AAIH in the first place, because I felt that this is the right time to do this. And I urge everyone that actually touches AI within the life sciences and medicine to put in their
Get
share.
involved.
Exactly.
Well, and even though it's in its infancy, Sarah, you and I have been in drug development for many years, and AI has been used in drug development for quite some time.
Over
So
a decade.
yeah, not so new to us. And in fact, we have one of our members, they have a drug. It's in phase 2 clinical trials, I believe, completely developed by Alex's company.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, completely developed by AI. And that's incredible. And it has the opportunity to make healthcare faster. and getting drugs to patients faster. But Sarah, I'd love to understand sort of where, being in drug discovery, where you think AI can really help shape specific disease indications.
Well, as we all know, it takes $2 billion to develop a drug. And I think it doesn't take too much of math skills to understand that this model is not really sustainable in the long run, especially if we want to cure many of the diseases out there. So as it relates to how AI is contributing to this, it is really driving the efficiency around discovery, right? And also being able to, the decrease in the cost and the efficiency and in the time and discovery opens up an opportunity to actually go after targets that you wouldn't go after necessarily because it wouldn't be cost effective, right? At the same time, what AI allows us, and AI is a very broad word, okay? And there are subcategories to AI. I can tell you that within Pepticom, what we do is falls under the category of reinforcement learning, machine learning, right? So this is, the future. The future lies within reinforcement learning, if you ask me, and deep learning. And whatever this does is basically helps you optimize on whatever molecule that you design. So the machine actually, we train the machine and the machine keeps learning on itself. So this is the major breakthrough, the ability to bring a drug to the market in less time, less money, and with better drug-like properties, less toxicity, better specificity, more precise, and better administration. That means bring more orally available molecules to the market, less injectables, less, drugs that are hard to adhere. Yeah. At the same time, where AI plays a big role is also in prevention. And that's, I think, therapeutics is good. I mean, drug and drug therapeutics are great as a measure of disease treatment. But I think when we deal with diseases, and the way that we need to look at diseases is not only how to treat a disease, but rather how to prevent it. And that's where AI can play a very major role.
And that's a big shift in our industry too. I think they've been very focused on, we tend to like painkillers, not vitamins sometimes, but I think AI has a real chance to help us really integrate it more easily into our life to be able to help prevent diseases versus treating them after the fact.
Definitely. And also, it can help serving underserved communities that don't have access to the same quality of care that people that live in New York City and San Francisco have, right? So yeah, that's truly remarkable and revolutionary in my end.
I think it's a great point, and I like to jump a little bit off script a bit and talking about the equitability and being able to. How do you guys each think that AI can help really provide access, but also what are the challenges that we have from that perspective as well of making sure that we're our data set isn't biased as well. I'm looking down at you, Sammy, because I want to start with you.
Yeah, bias is probably one of the major problems. If we're collecting and modeling our algorithms based on a certain patient population, is it really encompassing what the real problem is, right? I'm from Houston, and in Houston, we actually have, it's a major city, we have a lot of healthcare desert. So there are a lot of neighborhoods that do not have access to healthcare within a reasonable amount of time, right? They have to drive or whatever. And that became really apparent during COVID. Yeah. There were a lot of areas that didn't have any access. And so the question became, how can we make this available? Telehealth became a thing, and that became very important, to use our resources in order to become more efficient to provide that healthcare to patients, right? It is a major problem, but I think keeping biases under control is going to be very important for developers to consider from the get-go and to continue developing and monitoring their algorithms based on those parameters, right?
I think it's also very important to note that the healthcare system today is unable to address all the patients in the United States. We have shortage. So, my colleague here said that the people are afraid that AI or machine learning, whatever, is going to displace them. No, AI is here to support decision making. It is here to support the processes, making it more efficient, so that we could address those, what we call the healthcare deserts, and help maybe do a quicker triage or remote patient monitoring, which is a big thing. So
That's a good segue. And I wanted to mention, and I know this was one of your questions, so I am jumping ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, just check that list. I love it.
My former employer, LCMC Health, we have been, very much exploring and looking at ways to adopt AI into our practices. And one of the tools that we are the first in the New Orleans market to spearhead is called ADOC, and it helps radiologists, and it helps catch things that may not be immediately visible to the human eye. And, it's working in a nonprofit hospital system, and working in the innovation space has a lot of opportunities, but it also has some challenges when clinicians, tend to be a little more hesitant with tools like an ADOC. There was a little bit of reticence at first of like, well, we don't really need that. That's why we're trained. I will tell you that after a year of using it, they wanted more of it. And the other hospitals in our system are following suit because they've seen how happy the radiologists at UMC are. So that, to your point, Sarah, it is a tool that is empowering and adding extra support to our clinicians. It's ultimately helping keep our patients at the center and enabling better decision making and care for them.
I think it's a big piece of it. It's not the physicians that are going to get replaced. It's going to be the physicians that don't understand the potential that AI could help with them to be able to actually be with their patients more. And so how else have you guys seen it in our industry, healthcare, academia, or hospitals being utilized in that way?
yeah, go ahead. All I can say that 9 out of 10 hospitals by 2025 will have somewhat of an AI integrated systems. This is inevitable. So the question is not if, it's when and how.
So there are two areas in my mind that AI fits in. There's that administrative side, dealing with documentation, coding, et cetera. And then there's the patient facing side. On the administrative side, my favorite ones is working with NLP, right? Natural language processing, and being able to take in those medical notes and put them into the EHR system in such a way that the hospital can get reimbursed from the payers, right? I, for one, am always going to advocate against, I hate the AHR systems. They're made for payers and they're not made for patients or doctors. And it's become a problem, right? The documentation is creating physician burnout. They're not able to accurately capture what they need to capture. And it really slows down the process. And a lot of the financial burden will end up falling on the patient, right? We have one of the most expensive healthcares in the world.
I can actually give an example of a startup
Please
that
do.
just started out of Silicon Valley called Freed AI, Get Freed AI, that actually takes notes for the doctor.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
Is it actually free?
You're free of your pen.
I don't know. I'm not affiliated with them by any way. I just think it's a major productivity tool for physicians, but I want us to also look at the other side of this,
Sure.
which is patient outcomes. I think that at the end of the day, our system in the United States is very, 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 what I call broken. I didn't want to use the word broken, but it is broken. At the end of the day, we're unable to decide how data should be shared, who owns the data, how should we, collaborate on it. And I think that tools are amazing. We need to really discuss as an industry about how we should address these tools and how we should use them in order to elevate, the overall industry's needs. And also look at patient outcomes, because I think that the system is very afraid to look at the patient outcomes. Yeah.
I actually have another example about that. So there are quite a few companies that are trying to utilize anonymized data so they can promote sharing, right? A company out of California that I worked with, Integra, what they do is they take patient data as a whole, And they do statistical analyses and make replicate data that still maintain that statistical power, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think Links and MD has done the same thing.
Something like that.
And UCSF, by the way, UCSF Hospital has an amazing data science, you know, work that they've been doing in the last over a decade. In our last annual AAIH annual meeting, they've showed us the numbers that basically if you're a cancer patient and you enter the UCSF facility, you have a higher chances of between 3 to 5 years longer survival rate. Wow. This is remarkable. That means that they're actually looking at their patient outcomes. They're actually integrating whatever they're learning into their treatment protocols. So this is not like okay, empirically, we are releasing this protocol or that protocol. They're actually studying the outcomes of their treatments, which is very, very important.
And as we have a lot of academics here and university partners here, and I want to hear from each of you, how should we go back home and start implementing this within our own ecosystem, whether it's in the university or as for clinicians here that are in the hospital? I'm going to start with you. Yeah.
I think that we should challenge ourselves to ask questions in a different way. When I first started using ChatGPT, for example, I was using it like Google and just asking it kind of fact-based questions. And that's not, you know, it really kind of forces you, and it's at its highest utility when you're thinking about things a different way. And I generally think that is the challenge for universities and, you know, the next generation of clinical and biotech and healthcare leaders is we are going to be forced to or have the opportunity to think about these problems in a different way. And how can AI and tools like ChatGPT help us do that? One of my favorite quotes is the future is here. It's just not ubiquitous, or it's not evenly distributed. I think with the release of ChatGPT 4 and more AI solutions, it is ubiquitous and it's very easy to try. You can go to bing.com and try it. They have a great AI tool. So, you know, I think ease yourself into it, but also really challenge yourself to think about how are we going to prepare the next generation and the workforce to be thinking about how to solve problems in a different way.
Great. I mean, the phrase of garbage in, garbage out, you have to really be thoughtful about what you feed into the machine to make sure that you get the best possible outcomes. I mean, that's a big piece of ChatGPT and prompt engineering.
There's a professor at Rice University, because ChatGPT is a big issue in academia, right? They don't like it.
Yeah.
They're all going to cheat and the whole system is going to fall apart. But there's one professor in particular, and I really loved his approach where he is using ChatGPT as a tool to help his students. So the assignments will be use ChatGPT to answer this problem or to find a solution for this particular case study. And I think that's a really creative way of getting students like really embracing the tools that are available to them.
Instead of fighting it. Right?
Yeah.
I think we haven't touched something that is super important, which is data literacy. I think that we have a huge problem in the world, not only in the United States, of data literacy. So we can have all the ChatGPTs in the world, all the fancy schmancy, you know, algorithms. If people don't know what to do with it, it doesn't help anybody, right? So I think that as it relates to academia, you know, to your question, it all comes down to collaboration and being able to build an infrastructure that would enable scholars and people in the industry that later on, you know, a lot of these scholars will become the next, you know, maybe, you know, the next Recursion or the next, you know, Pepticom or the next whatever. So it's about preparing them, giving them the guidelines, the know-how, and also being able to adapt to the industry. Right? It's not only scholars and academia and entrepreneurs. We have big pharma that is dictating a lot of these things. So it's really engaging all the stakeholders and being part of the conversation. and having your ears and eyes open and understand that you have to come up to speed very fast, with the things, because whatever is current right now might not be relevant tomorrow. It's so everything is moving very fast. The technology is moving very fast.
Oh, great. We have 10 minutes left and I'd like to start opening the forum to the audience. But before I'm going to ask a question to you guys. How many of you guys in your research pursuits, in your companies, in your startups, how many of you guys actually utilize AI in some shape or form?
That's
a
a lot.
great amount. And in your personal life. Wonderful. All right. Any questions from the audience?
Right here.
Great.
Thanks. This panel has been really, really good. And you had mentioned it earlier, about garbage in, garbage out, and building these models of things. How do you see the way forward is as we use more models in our healthcare? How do we prevent, the models generating the data and then the data sort of creating a feedback loop of model?
Really important question. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I think
Well, I would say that's part of reinforcement learning right there, right? That's exactly what I was talking about, because if you talk, I mean, reinforcement learning is a second stage. The very simple example I can give you, when you grow a baby, right? You feed it, you talk to it, and then it starts talking. And then whenever you check whether they're saying the right word, for instance, or if I show them an apple, if they say an apple, then I would go thumbs up. If it's not an apple, I would go thumbs down. That's basically reinforcement learning, right? So are you asking how far along are we from there? That's the question.
I mean, I think also potentially like in the regulatory space, right? Of like when, legislation comes along that dictates how these models are applied in the healthcare setting. I think one concern might be is equity and inclusion and all those things, and making sure that the data that we're using to build models for treatment, that they include different patient populations, and whether that's a recruitment strategy.
Definitely,
whether
definitely.
Yeah.
You just hit it right in the nail in the head, as we say, because at the end of the day, who is building these models? Us. We have our own biases. This bias is translated into the technology that we build. It's very linear, right? So mathematics is inherently biased. Okay, so if we think that we can build something that is non-biased, I'll be the first person to pick up that call. Just give me a call, okay? So there will be bias, but we need to minimize the bias. Yeah. And how are we minimizing the bias? So you just said clinical trial recruitment strategy, qualifying data sets. How are we qualifying data? Like, this is a big question that the industry has been debating, and that's what we do at the AAIH, actually. Yeah. We bring the people that actually build these models to have those conversations, right?
And it starts before then, too. When you're filling out your form for your NIH grant and you have to justify sex differences in your animals, there's a reason, because they always use males, and you can't build a data set on just male mice. Or a lot of data sets are built on white males in terms of clinical trials, and that's not who we all cure. So
I don't know, over 70% of drugs were built for a very certain population, and we've survived thus far. I'm not saying that it's the right approach, right? And actually strongly biased towards male, because everything was tested on male specimen and not female specimens, right? So I think that it's good that we are having these discussions. It's good that the awareness is the first step, right? I would say it's 50% to the solution. Now we have to know what are the next steps? Where are we going to take this? For instance, in dermatology applications, right? You have big biases because some of these technologies, they don't work on African-American population or darker skinned people. So you have to train these models accordingly. And maybe the regulator here should play a role. That means should play a role in a sense of a solution cannot be deployed unless it can address X amount of the population, let's say. Okay, this is just a suggestion.
If I can add to that, I think that's also crucial to include different perspectives at the table when building these models, right? Social scientists, policymakers, public health representatives, folks that understand the disease. I cannot tell you how many times I'll meet with a developer or computational scientist and you've got this solution and it's going to be perfect, only to find out that they're not really solving a problem that exists in the real world applications, right? In the healthcare world, they're just solving a symptom of it, but the core problem is something else that's solvable. But they needed to have those conversations a lot earlier on.
Well, that was a good question because we all have something to say about it. We don't
Even the
quite have,
moderator, I'm like, no,
we don't
no.
quite have the answers, but I think the proof is going to be in the pudding on the legislative front. They're using a lot of words like algorithmic integrity and algorithmic discrimination and the integrity of the data, and it just remains to be seen how that legislative issue will continue.
Yeah,
But
we
I-
will need to
yeah.
define the ethical backbone of
Mhm.
AI. That's what we
The
will need to
moral,
do.
yeah,
The morals,
it's a
yeah.
very difficult
Exactly.
conversation for policymakers
Right.
to have.
Right.
For example, if AI spits out a recommendation, even in the radiology example, that hasn't happened, that disagrees with a physician. What do you
But
do?
that's why
What
it's
are
a
the-
decision-making support like
Mhm,
system.
mhm.
And it's not making the decision for you.
Mhm.
Therefore, you're the one making the decision.
Right. But I also just want to add on to something Sammy said, which is about representation. And it's very important for representation in the data development, in the tool development, in research settings, and advocacy settings to make sure that a variety of voices are being heard, to avoid, it being biased toward, one population or another. So definitely encourage you all, since this has been such a riveting discussion, to get engaged on the advocacy front and let folks know what your opinions are on the safety and the future of AI.
And you don't have to be in AI to join the AAIH either. In fact, it's probably better so we can start bringing in people that can learn about AI. Sorry, Patrick.
One more question. Hi, thanks for all the insight. It's been extremely interesting. So it was alluded to a few times in terms of the barriers that we're going to have pushback from both patients in terms of being scared of AI, and then providers for their own reasons pushing back on integration. So based on your experience and expertise, I would love to hear if you could come up with a few concrete steps for how we expedite integration, both in terms with healthcare systems, with startups, and utilizing AI to actually drive patient outcomes.
Here, and then we can work our way.
Okay.
Since you used it within LCMC.
So we have a director of innovation at LCMC Health, and this is what keeps him up at night. This question of how do I advance innovation and balance the perspectives of my providers, and it's really not. I've been talking about the clinical use with ADOC, but there's also tremendous potential in rev cycle and billing and on the finance side within the health system. So there's a litany of uses, and it's cultural. I think the organization has to really be ready to accept, and this is why I was talking about just different ways of thinking and being open to innovative approaches versus we've always done it this way. We don't need help, which is typically where some people start because they're very proud of their profession and they've trained a long time, to be where they are. And so it's encouraging people in the organization, and it starts at the top, very much making sure that people are comfortable trying out new ideas.
I actually think a little bit differently about this. I don't see why patients would push back on AI. And that's for the reason that these AI systems should be so seamlessly integrated that the patient experience should be enhanced much more than whatever they're getting right now. So if anything, patients should be happy that the system is becoming more effective because it means that it will lower the cost and eventually they'll be paying less. Hopefully. I hope so.
More time at the doctor too.
Right. If my physician is not, my family doctor is not bothered now by 20 line items that they need to do, administratively, that means they have more attention to give me as a patient. And that's a big game changer, I think. As for the provider side, I think there is another issue of what is the motivation, right? So different sides to this ecosystem present different motivations, and it's not always for the benefit of the patient, by the way. So providers, they want to maximize their profits at the end of the day, and eventually they look at it how much something is accretive to their balance sheet, right? So from that end, I think that it's also relating to how much does this thing can help them grasp or put their hands on the data they're gathering, right? But yet they don't feel like something is very, crucial to their business is being taken away from them. I hope that I explained it well.
Yeah, great.
That's it.
And last, Sammy.
Yeah, just quickly. I think to my colleague's point, there are some like proverbial low-hanging fruit that can be applied. Administrative is an easy one. I've seen a couple, mostly in the radiology space, that help make time more efficient, right? Take out the normal scan so they can really focus your time on the ones that have an abnormality or need more attention, right? And I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to get people more comfortable with the technology in their space.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, these technologies as it relates to imaging, for instance, today you have AI platforms that actually can connect to current MRI devices and hack it and make it more efficient and lower the time that it takes to take an MRI scan, for instance. So there's so many uses, and I'm sure that both the provider and the patient can come into terms at some point.
Well, great. I'm sure we could go on and on about this. I mean, you corner any of us, we'll talk you to death about this subject because it's really nerdy and fun, and it's a really an amazing opportunity. And so I want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank all of you guys here for not just joining this panel, but for the last 2 days. I think it's been an incredible experience to be with a diverse crowd, a diverse group of universities on the third coast, the best coast. We're really excited to have you, and I hope that this continues to grow. So I want to thank our panelists. Thank you guys.
Definitely. Thank you.